Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, we've got Mr. Jarrett Bush in the house. Very excited to talk to you, Jarrett. For those of you that don't know the name, Jarrett is investor, keynote speaker, motivational speaker, corporate team builder at Jarrett Bush Speaks Pro. And we know him in Wisconsin as former Green Bay Packer and, more importantly, Super Bowl champion. Jarrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Dustin, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Looking forward to talking.
Pleasure to have you. I'm excited for the conversation. Certainly want to talk some football, want to talk some business, but I'm really important. I remember when you came to the Green Bay Packers, and I would love to hear the story of Jarrett Bush and kind of how you came from maybe high school athlete to NFL football player.
Yeah. So born and raised in California, the youngest of three. So I definitely, I took a lot of losses just in a very competitive family and very educational driven, from a two-parent household. And you definitely got to see the successes and some of the mistakes from your siblings. And so I got to learn a lot along the way. So my brother definitely paved the way. He's a doctor now, a cardiothoracic surgeon, and my sister's a nurse practitioner, helping those patients. And so, right, very educational driven. So that was a vehicle for college, and I definitely wanted to help my parents out there, and I was able to get a scholarship for football. I wanted to do track and football. That was the goal. And so I was torn between some schools because they wouldn't allow me to run track, but I really wanted to do football. But ultimately, I wanted to do both. And so that led me to having that capability and capacity to do both. I think it definitely took that resilience and that work ethic to the NFL field. As we know, the USA track and field team is very dominant in this country, and so the NFL was definitely my ticket. And so 15 years later, I got my first shot at the Carolina Panthers, being an undrafted free agent, which was a very tumultuous moment because the draft is such an overwhelming experience, and I think just being grounded by your family is something that I would definitely recommend, to somebody entering to the draft, because you could be a second rounder and all of a sudden you're undrafted. You know what I'm saying? So it can be nerve wracking, and ultimately I landed where I feel like the big man above wanted me to land because it led me here, and so. I was I'm blessed for an opportunity for the Green Bay.
That's cool. Did you ever think that you'd be living in Green Bay, Wisconsin again?
You know what? When I was released from the Panthers, and I was like, my agent told me that it was a toss up between Tampa Bay and Dallas, and that determined on what team who had the worst record. So that year, the Packers had the worst record. I think they were like 4-12, and so I went to the Packers, and as I'm getting on the plane, I'm like, "Where's Wisconsin?" And I was like, well, as long as they have a pro football team, that's good for me, And so, as I was landing, I was like, man, there's nothing but silos and farm fields. So, but then I saw the fan base, and it's second to none. Second to none.
That's amazing. So, Jared, one of the things you see a lot of successful people is the adversity that they have to overcome kind of throughout that journey, right? So everyone looks at you today and says like, oh man, I mean, how do I be more like Jarrett, right? But, like you talked about being undrafted, candidly being moved to a team that wasn't very good at the beginning. Right. There's a lot of adversity that you had to go throughout that process. How did you kind of continue to show up every day and battle and have that mindset of continuing to overcome each of those points in time where a lot of people could have just folded up and said, maybe this isn't for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was just really driven. I was really driven to be excellent at what I was doing. I knew that I had a vehicle. I knew I had a certain ability. and I know that I had to hone that ability, and just sharpen that ability. And I need to be around people to help me do that. I was fortunate to be around, Brett Favre, Donald Driver, Charles Woodson, and those players helped cultivate that continuity and to embrace that sharpening process, because it wasn't always easy. Of course, right? If you stick a brand new pencil in a pencil sharpener, it pretty much goes through hell, right? But when you pull it out, it's nice and sharp and it's ready to go, and able to leave a lasting mark, writing on paper. So, yeah, through that sharpening process, it's tough because you have injuries, you have distractions, you have all kinds of things, right? You have the business side of things that can really leave you depleted or deflated. But knowing that you got to put on that helmet and you got to bring life to a lot of people just wearing that jean, in that green and gold, in that jersey. You walk into a lot of hospitals and people are not well off, and so you're able to enlighten those people and make an impact by wearing that jersey and harnessing, right, and harnessing that energy and that enthusiasm with that jersey and that helmet and changing people's lives.
That's tremendous.
Jarrett,
Yeah.
when you're back in your playing days and even going back as far as to college, what's it like getting to that next level? So you give a lot of people who are gifted, who
Yeah.
can, I would say, do the bare minimum and they can make it to the NFL. That's the super, maybe elite 1%. Then you have the individuals who got to work hard. And then you've got everybody else who's got to work hard, grind every day. They got to do little things like eating and taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Where did you fall and how hard was it to get from college or maybe high school to college and college to the NFL?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Chris. So the work ethic, right? To sum it up all in one, and I can elaborate after, I think you gotta be able to do the things that people won't do. And until you really embrace that, you're gonna stay where you're at, because the competition is like that. Everybody's good. Everybody has like the All-American status. Everybody has like the All-Conference status. Everybody has like the team captain status from their college team. But as soon as you take that step into the NFL, everybody's done what you've done, in the sense of maybe like amount of yards, whether it's interceptions, whether PBUs, whether it's completions, or amount of touchdowns at the running back, or maybe the amount of your obsolete sack record. You just have a zero like shutdown like sack record. You know what I'm saying, in the sense of like a left tackle. So yeah. So you gotta find your edge. Like, what is going to separate you from the rest of the pack? That's gonna allow you. That's gonna separate you from the rookie that just came in behind you. Whether it's your stamina, whether it's your strength, whether it's your speed, whether it's your cerebral ability to process information quickly and faster than everybody else. Right? What are your relationships with your coaches? What are your relationships with your teammates? So there's a lot of variables there. That's a great question, Chris. And so, right? Do you get along? Do you get along with the GM? Do you get along with the head coach? That plays a huge role.
That can't be important, Dick.
Yeah.
Let alone the physical ability just to play football. Like, do you get your comrades? Do your comrades like you? What about the training staff? Are you a good character guy? Are you a high effort guy? And a lot of times they keep that very simple. Smart. Are you smart? Are you tough? Are you in the film room? Or are you in the hot tub or the cold tub? Or are you, what I'm saying, hurt a ton? So a lot, right? Your health, right? How well do you take care of yourself? A lot of guys, right? I started getting like, physical therapists towards, the middle of my career, whether it's seeing a psychologist, whether it's just making sure that your head was on straight, because it's an emotional roller coaster all season. And by the end of the season, you're exhausted, and whether it's physically, mentally, your family, let's talk about that. Your family is all supporting you, right? So if you have a wife or a significant other, they're barely seeing you from 6 a.m. to about 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And you might see them before you take off if you're having an away game. If you have a home game, you still got to stay in the hotel. So, right. And so there's it's a juggling act, and you need a support system. So there's a lot of variables, Chris, in that helps separate yourself from the rest of the pack as an NFL player. Does it take a huge work ethic physically? Yes. But there's a whole lot of other variables that people don't talk about as NFL players stepping into it.
Jarrett, so being a star high school football player and being arguably a star college football player, when you were brought in to play special teams, right? When you came to the Packers?
Correct.
So how hard is it, knowing that that's going to be your role as someone who, as the kids would say, is him today, and knowing that you have to do all the little things?
Yeah. Well, you have to do. I mean, those little things are magnetized or just brought to the conscious in the sense of you got to do little things just to even make it. Just being a good character guy, and being a good guy. I can't tell you, Chris, the packet they sent to my high school was about this thick of like evaluations from like your teachers, what type of person were you, all the way to middle school. And my high school principal called me like, "Hey, we just received a packet, about your evaluation, and we filled it out. We sent it back because we thought it was just a wonderful opportunity. We were actually quite surprised how heavy it was." So, right? And so I was like, man, I was sitting on the phone like, wow, they really do their due diligence on like who they're bringing in here,
Yeah.
And so if you were some smack off back in high school, they're gonna know about it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of kids don't really realize that what you do in your early years does play a role into your future. And so it's, we're not just being a broken recorder as a kids. Hey, be nice to your teachers. Hey, kids, be nice to your parents. Because all those character issues can either make you or break you sometimes. I mean, or not, depending on how good of a character guy you are ultimately. Sure, does the physical aspects play a role? Yes. But no, to answer your question, Chris, I think it's definitely something that you have to be cognizant of. Like, I think the character and the behavioral issues probably supersede the physical abilities. Because if you're not a good guy, 9 times out of 10, you got to think like you're a highly paid employee. We want to know that this person's going to make the best decisions, even though he's a very talented athlete. And I think a lot of times, I think kids take that for granted. Like they can just be a jerk off and think that they're going to get paid, handsomely in NFL and make not so good decisions. They want guys who want good decisions, especially in that time of integrity, right? We all know, like at late night hours, and you come up to the red light, like, are you gonna stop or are you gonna go through it? They want the guy who's gonna stop at the red light and then go when it's green. So a lot of times, I think there is that work ethic, yes. But a lot of times I feel like the character or supersede a lot of times the physical aspects of football.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, which is a great takeaway, is being willing to do the things that nobody else is willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so often when we talk to kids or adults, right, they want the outcome,
right?
They want the success,
right?
But it's interesting because so many of them don't even realize that they're not doing that stuff,
right?
They, like, as a leader of an organization, right? I coach a lot of our team, and that to me is always kind of the intriguing part. Is as a coach, you want to kind of shake them and say, but you want the outcome, but you're not doing any of the hard stuff,
right?
And so, do you really? I mean, everybody wants it, but do you really want it? And so, I'm curious. In your travels, right? You clearly saw teammates that probably had a lot of maybe the hard skill sets, but to everything you're talking about around character and kind of going that extra step, I'm curious as a teammate, how hard is that? Because, I know as a coach, you see this potential in people, and you in some ways you want it more for them than they want it for themselves.
Right.
And so I'm curious as a teammate in your travels, how did you deal with that? And how often were you almost a coach of a teammate to try to get them to kind of unleash their own potential?
Yeah. No, it was definitely a time where I stepped away from that rookie green-eared mentality and stepped into savvy veteran, seasoned veteran. And so once I stepped into that, yeah, I definitely was a coach on the field, coach and player. And man, there was some really trying times because you really saw potential in the player and just quiet. He went about his business and he worked hard. And I was like, man, I wonder why this guy's not seeing the field, you know? And if you really sat down and you watched the film, like, okay, like he just needs opportunity. It's not really anything that there's anything red flags here. It's just he just needs the opportunity to shine, and then
Yeah.
he might just have a guy that's in front of him that's a Hall of Famer.
Hmm.
It's nothing that he's not doing. It's a sense of, well, he's just got a top of the line, top fuel player, like maybe a Clay Matthews sitting in front of you. Well, at the same time, I think those are the guys that you kind of just pat on your back. You put your arm around, like, hey, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. Because not, you got to break it down. There's not too many Clay Matthews or like Reggie White. Think about the guy who sat behind Reggie White or like Brett Favre. Like those guys, and those guys went on to go play. And so I think you share those stories with those people because they can get disheartened because they know they have the capability of playing. Doug Peterson, he played for a long time. Ty
Yeah.
Dett played for, right? Matt Flynn, he went on, started, got a great contract. And so you definitely just, you definitely keep uplift your brothers. The NFL is not for the weary, and understand every year they're having guys purposely to replace you. And so you definitely encourage your brothers that you can become close to because you want to go to the Super Bowl, right? Ultimately, that's the ultimate goal, right? Super Bowl or bust. However, you do want to maintain those relationships. Those relationships are vitally crucial to keep mended and to continue to foster along the way because it takes a team, it takes an organization from top to bottom, from the GM to the garbage man, the garbage technician in any organization. And I think, just having that support system, having your brothers, creating barbecue opportunities to be vulnerable, to create that brotherhood really plays onto the football field. And you have a sense of love, and I think once you have that love of a brotherhood, man, that's when you really start to be dynamic. That's when you really start to be powerful. And that's when the football really kind of just takes over for a lot of teams.
Jarrett, you seem to have this figured out now as your, post NFL career is here.
Yeah.
Are you currently mentoring, coaching any youth, kids, players?
I am, yeah. So that's a great question, Chris. So I'm the sprints coach for my youth AAU kids team is Milwaukee Speed Academy in Milwaukee. I coach the Notre Dame track and field, Notre Dame Tritons here in Green Bay. So we are currently in pursuit for our second. And yeah, I do the TV show with Brooke Griffin on Locker Room Live. So, but
yeah,
the mentorship, yeah, that's definitely something that I love doing, and I feel like they resonate with because I relate so much because I felt like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I was sitting in their shoes, and so I know exactly what they're thinking in the sense of like, all right, let's do this. You guys want to win? You guys are competitive. Well, I can't do anything with it, so now it's my turn to pass on that knowledge, and I have a lot of joy doing it. The kids that want it, the kids that desire it, I'm definitely willing to definitely go the length of whatever they want to accomplish.
So with that, you're coaching a kid, whether it be track and field or football, and you're mentoring them.
Yeah.
And they have these big aspirations of wanting to play at the next level, which for them
Yeah.
would probably be college and then maybe professional after that.
Yeah.
What's the one or two things kids today need to hear from someone like you or from a mentor that maybe they just don't see, maybe they just don't know? Because I've got one in my house that needs to hear a couple of those things too.
That's a great question, Chris. I think the one thing that I gotta say two things. Gotta be two things. Two things I got. One, whatever that they want to accomplish, write it down. And I always have them write it down and put it in an envelope and stick it underneath their pillow. And be specific on what you want. Because I feel like if you just say, I want a house, well, you're going to get a house, but it's not going to have a driveway. You know what I'm saying? So I told them to be specific on what you want. Give a timeline on what you want. How's it going to feel when you get it? You know, and then what purpose are you going to have to wake up each day to get that? Secondly, realize that they're going to fail. Be okay with failure. I think a lot of times we have a weird connection with failure, thinking that failure is defining us. Oh, I fell in my hurdle race. I'm a sham. I'm an impo. You know, I'm just. I'm not gonna do good. I was embarrassed by my friends, and I'm never gonna do hurdles, right? So, just realizing, embracing failure, and I share a lot of those stories, and I think that really humanizes me a lot of times when I share that, and kids were like, "What? Like this guy, Super Bowl champ, just told me like he just brawled out on the 110 hurdles, his junior year." But I tell that story that I was ranked number 1 going to the race. I felt arrogant. Banged the first hurdle, went head over heels. I was done. Next year, I went to state, placed 5th, in the state, and I recovered for that, redeemed myself. And so a lot of times, just sharing that testimony of failure makes people a little bit more resilient when they do fail, because they're gonna fail. They're gonna fail so bad. They're gonna want to take off those cleats and want to throw their helmet down. They're gonna just want to quit. I was that kid again, and so we gotta be able to relate to the student or the athlete in failure, because whether, I don't care if you're an attorney, you're the president, you're a garbage technician, whether you're a maid, you've had some type of failure along the way. And so that resilience is really key, that I would tell a lot of kids, is to get up and get back on your horse.
But the resilience is great. And kids, I think, are more resilient today than most adults. But I want
Yeah.
to dive a little bit deeper into that subject, because I think that you look at professional athletes like yourself. You made it to the NFL. I'm sure at that point people say, well, Jarrett Bush, he's an NFL football player.
Yeah.
We expect this out of him, or we expect this out of your teammates. But everybody has a bad day. They have bad games. They have bad weeks. Even you look at some of the best players in the world, like an Aaron Rodgers, they can and they will have a bad season. Maybe bad for them is good for somebody else, but
Yeah.
how do you bounce back from that? Because you played in the NFL for 11 years, 10 years?
10 years, decade.
So you've probably been a part of some really good teams that maybe overachieved, or some really good teams that underachieved. How
Right.
do you bounce back? How do you become more resilient?
It's a really good question, Chris. You gotta love what you're doing, man. You gotta love it. Like, I understand, like, if you're a sales guy, like, you gotta love. So one thing about sales, like, I completely hate losing. I hate losing. Full like transparency, I hate losing. Probably more than I love winning. And I know that sounds
Interesting.
so backwards, but I hate losing so bad, so much that I will go through the ends of the earth just not to lose.
Yeah.
That means I'm destined to win at one point, And so I think you got to have that passion. You got to have that drive, that allows you to supersede some of those road bumps, because you're gonna go against them. You're gonna bounce against them, and so you got to be able to bounce back, be intentional, and be full transparent. Look yourself in the mirror. Where can Jarrett improve? Where can X and X improve? What part of my game needs improvement? And you gotta be able to have that sit down, be grounded enough to look at yourself like, okay, these are some aspects. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. These are some areas where I need to improve if I want to go where I want to go. And so I feel like that, with that intentionality, allows you to improve. And I think once you have that little notch of an incremental improvement, that gives you motivation, and so on. In each incremental improvement, you get better, right? Because once you get better, you like yourself, because you're getting better. And like, man, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I should keep going. But at the same time, it goes back to the resiliency. When you have that setback, you got to be able to have the passion and enthusiasm to kind of get back in it, And some people are better than others. I can't say that all people are good at that, because obviously some people quit. However, that intentionality and progress is huge to build momentum, and how you do that is really crucial. As well as the support. I want to highlight that as best I can. Having a support system, having a certain environment around you to build that is crucial. I feel like you're a big byproduct of your environment, which I love about the Packers, because every time you walk through the Packers, they have the greatness in those hallways. You have Reggie White, Brett Favre, you have Tony Cannondale, you have all the Packer Hall of Famers like down a hallway just staring at you. Like they're literally like ghosts looking at you, with their eyes moving, which is funny, but there's a lot of great players that walk through those halls, man. So you're almost like, it just rubs off on you. And when you're in that environment, you're destined to have some type of success. If you don't win the Super Bowl, fine. But at least you're given the opportunity to be in that environment, to rub off on you, to know what it's like to be within greatness.
So what's it like when an organization has a couple of players that may not make great choices? Because in Green Bay, you're in a small town, smallest town in all professional sports. It's a fishbowl. Yep. Someone does something wrong, which inevitably happens every few years.
Yep.
How do you make sure that as a young player, or even a high school student, which I'm sure you deal with this all the time, kids want to have fun, they want to be kids. How do you coach them, and how do you get them to do that? Because my wife and I remind ourselves that we have a 16-year-old, and we have to let him be a 16-year-old and make his choices, good or bad, and learn from them.
Yeah, that's true. So I think, to piggyback off that, like, you gotta let them make the mistakes and embrace those mistakes. A lot of times, like for myself, I was a hardhead. I had to learn the hard way a lot of times. For instance, my dad, just on a smaller scale, I wanted to eat soda and Pop-Tarts before high school football practice. So my dad let me go out there and eat Pop-Tarts and soda. Man, that was probably one of the worst decisions I've ever made. Because after that practice, Chris and Dustin, I fell out. Literally, I had no energy. I threw my helmet off. I puked because I felt like I had nothing in my system. And that was the moment that I had to take in. I was like, you know what, Jerry, if you're gonna do this double sport athlete, you need to start eating a solid meal. And so that was on the smaller scale. And so, yeah, sometimes you gotta fall flat. Your parents have to teach you or allow you to fall flat on your face, and that goes back to failure, right? You failed to eat the right things for what you want to do, and I had to learn from it. I had to bounce back. And so, yeah. Are they going to make bad decisions, bonehead decisions? Yeah. Are they young, 22-year-old with a huge bank account? Yeah. I think that's why you give them a support system. To your point, Chris, you got to give them a support system and some mentors along the way to show them how to walk and talk like a professional athlete. If they're not shown how to do that, who are you learning from? Other athletes in the league? Well, you're only getting a glimpse. Maybe you get to talk to them during the off season. Maybe you work out with them, but you're still only getting a glimpse. You're only seeing them outside the workplace. You're seeing them like in the workout facility. You're not seeing them on a day-to-day basis, month-to-month basis. How they study film, how they interact with their family, how they interact with fans, because the fans have to like you. That fan engagement is crucial. And so if you're not making wise decisions on how you pick and choose and choose balance with interacting with fans, because I know a lot of guys have radio shows and TV shows, but then how do you balance that with the football, your family, and then the radio show or TV show? Well, sometimes you just don't feel like, going out there because you're just so exhausted because you just got done running 5 miles and colliding with other humans. Let's be honest, people. Like, we're human. Like, okay, I can understand that you don't want to do a radio show after you just collided head to head, 14, 15 times. And you just want to just lay on the couch and just be with your family and toss your baby girl up and down and have a nice dinner. So having that balance, having somebody to kind of keep you grounded, again, just having that mentor, a support system around you to help you make those decisions. Because I guarantee if you don't have those things, I think you're more likely to make a bad decision than not. If you don't have that, you know what I'm saying? So it's really crucial to have those important people around you, and the Packers do a great job of that.
So Jared, all those learnings, all those overcoming adversities that you took from your NFL career, how have you now transitioned that into post NFL career?
It was tough. You definitely had to find your identity once again, which was scary at the same time, pretty cool, because it was like a blank canvas. You know, they kind of like, okay, you can't wear number 24 anymore. You can't wear this pack of G, on the helmet anymore. So you find yourself to a higher calling, and just kind of like Jay-Z would say, let me reintroduce yourself. My name is Hove, but I just kind of switched it to my name is Jay. And I got to choose what I wanted to do. So I got to change that tenacity, that mindset, and put it into the business world. And that's what I intend to do. Now, was it easy? No, it wasn't, because you had to recultivate myself. I had to break a lot of habits and unlearn some things and reteach myself certain things. For one, depending that you think that the Green Bay Packers, that's the only organization sometimes. Like I was diehard. It's still in the veins. And you rely on them so heavily, and you really don't think sometimes there's anything outside of that, and right, because you're so like laser focused on winning the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden that's done. So okay, now you gotta broaden your perspective, your vision for what's really out here. There's more to football out here, and so start picking up a few books and dived into the entrepreneurship, and it's very challenging and very rewarding, just like football is. And if you ever play golf, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
You can start off like you might be hot one day, but the next day it's like, man, what the heck just happened? Right?
So I'm curious. You talked about liking to win, but really hating to lose, which we hear from so many of the most competitive and successful people.
Yeah.
As you've reintroduced yourself, right, and continuing to reimagine yourself, and how do you define that now? How do you think of that now? Because football, it's obvious, it's clear, right? Like, but in entrepreneurship and business and all that, it's not as clear, right? It's hard to determine, am I winning or am I losing? So I'm curious, just how do you kind of define that in your own head today?
Yeah. Well, I like to always reflect and see if I'm improving in certain areas. I think, definitely just still having that tenacity, still having that mindset of a go-getter, and just having that perseverance and that grit, that charismatic personality, I think definitely resonates with that entrepreneurship. And how do I define that? Yeah, like what impact am I making? Am I making other lives better? Am I influencing them in the right way that deems fit for my strengths? And how do I strengthen some of those weaknesses so that I can best model for the people that I'm influencing, right? Mm-hmm. We all have flaws, we all have weaknesses, but I'm always looking like how can I better those weaknesses, and how can I better highlight my strengths as well to showcase what a high value man like myself really looks like. That's humble, that's hungry, that's smart, and also resilient, and also has that higher calling to action. So there are a lot of variables, the definition. But I will say that any success or failure does not define you. It's just, can you keep going? And it's about the journey. It's about the people that you meet along the way, not really the destination. So And I've been to some cool places, so I'm definitely enjoying the ride.
Cool places
awesome.
like Green Bay.
Yeah. But right, like when we won the Super Bowl, like we got a chance to go over to overseas and go to Jordan, go to Kuwait, ride on some really cool aircraft carriers and meet some of the military troops, and all because we won a Super Bowl. And frankly, I don't think I would ever elect. I don't think you would, Chris or Dustin, to go to some of the places. I don't think you would pay your own money to go to, but I was fortunate to go. For the Packers to, and I don't even know where we were in the middle of the ocean. I have no idea. It's probably like, classified information because I want to say the USS Carl Vinson was the same aircraft carrier that they bagged Osama bin Laden on. And so, right,
wow.
and if you can put that experience in the bottle, I'm not sure who would pay for it. Maybe they would. But been some cool places, man. Like I said, the Packers are a first class organization, and it was definitely a vehicle to see the world.
From your time in the NFL, when you look back, what was maybe one of the most rewarding moments? Now, we know the Super Bowl might be one of the most exciting, but
yeah,
when you look back, what was really rewarding about all that?
I think what's really exciting is the common theme of football and communion and all the families that you get to bring together. Really, truly, because I feel a lot of times families, right, just like the teenager now. If you have a teenager, really, they're like they want nothing to do with you. But for some reason, football brings them to the table and some food, right? And so I'm really proud of what football really does and brings people together, all colors, right? And so whether it's international or here in the U.S., people will come and fly to see some football. And I love that aspect, how everybody can come together and be so rowdy and so intoxicated, but still so friendly and love football.
Can't forget about that part, intoxicated, especially in Green Bay.
Hey, that's part of it. And we appreciate it as players because you guys get louder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always love to see when a guy jumps in the stands. Every once in a while, you see someone spill their beer onto a player, and you're like, oh, boy.
Yes. It's a good thing, man. It's a good aspect. I love it.
Jarrett, you talked a lot about leadership and mentorship, both your time as a Packer, as a young player in college and that. Who was your mentor?
So I had 3 mentors. They were, first one was Burt Brown. He was a former receiver in DB, all-state receiver. Very knowledgeable guy, right? They all played at a high level. David Lawrence, again, another Division I football player, definitely kind of showed me the ropes of where I wanted to go. And then John Rushing, he's no longer on this earth anymore. God bless his heart. But again, a guy that showed me the ropes again, that should take me to elevate. Had some time with the Dallas Cowboys, and he had some time with the Canadian Football League to kind of show me those ropes, and was really hard on me because again, I was one of those you're gonna learn the tough lessons, son, and so. Yeah, they're very influential. I wouldn't be here without them. I can honestly say that wholeheartedly, that without those guys in my life, you would not be witnessing the Jarrett Bush that you see today at all. Because I didn't know better. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what the discipline looked like. I didn't know what the work ethic looked like. I didn't know what the high character looked like. I had to be shown that. I needed a model to look after, or to see, to model my behavior after somebody. And I'm a big believer in that, because if you're not shown what that looks like, or maybe told, or maybe just reinforced, I'm not sure anybody can succeed. I think in the military, right, there's one drill sergeant, right, for them to model after the drill sergeant, or admiral, You see him with all his like decorated, medals, right? Well, he holds himself to that, right? That utmost respect and that utmost character. Um, and so that's what you shoot for. And so a lot of times I feel like you need that model to kind of look after so that you know what it's look, especially in the tough times. Everybody can do it in the good times, but what happens when the bad times happen? Like, how do you bounce back? Well, you need somebody to show you what that looks like, or else you're gonna go do you're gonna do that. You're gonna go a route that you think is best and is not necessarily in your best interest. So, yeah, no, definitely that modeling is definitely a huge behavior influencer.
Yeah. Jarrett, my final question, very curious. As a fan, during your time the Green Bay Packers, you had a good chunk of time in the Brett Favre era and the Aaron Rodgers era. Who
Yeah,
was the best locker room leader? And maybe it was for you in the defense, and
yeah.
why?
Same between Brett and A-Rod.
No, just in your whole Packer career.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough question, Chris. I mean,
Or
shoot.
talk about some of your favorites.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many because you have so many to pick from because you have. I mean, I just named. I could rattle off a few. You have the Donald Driver, you have the Brett. Then you have like your Nick Barnett, who is like,
Hmm.
he's like, he's gonna walk in with his fro, boom bop, loud, you know. But then you
Fan
have
favorite.
yeah, but then you have Jordy Nelson goes about his business, real quiet, but then his play speaks louder than how he speaks, right?
Yeah.
And then you have right, and then you have D lineman BJ Raji, you got Clay, right? So you have a lot of different characters in that locker room, man, and you're very fortunate, right? And then you got Amon Greens, you have your William Hendersons that I was fortunate to play with, and Al Harris, you know, definitely Charles Woodson, especially the way he dressed. He made you feel bad, man. He made you feel bad. It was like, you know, you look at your jeans, he's wearing a full on suit with the ascot just dialed in. And I was like, okay, you know, challenge accepted. Challenge accepted. So right, so you got to pick and choose and pull what aspects do you wanna utilize for yourself. Which ones do you like? Which ones do you don't like? You know, and so those locker room influences, those locker room chats are highly valuable. It doesn't matter like if you're Charles Woodson or the 53rd guy on the roster. You know, that brotherhood was really important. So I can't just pick one, Chris, but it's a great question.
Good. I love that. That's a great answer. I'm going to ask you one more question, though, because I'm curious. You were on some teams that made it very, very far in the playoffs, and you're on one specifically that won the Super Bowl. So I'm curious, the year you won the Super Bowl, was that a year that the team knew that, like, hey, this is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And Mike did a good job manifesting that, man, because the night before the Super Bowl, we all tried on and got our finger sized for the ring. And so if you can imagine, that's really manifesting, displaying that it's already done. Like we've already won it. Like we're gonna go get our finger size for the ring. And I thought that really placed a small seed in each one of our brains that we're gonna win this thing. We just gotta go and do it, you know. And sure enough, man, we did it. Because I mean, we started striking hot at the right time too. I mean, there's a ton of injuries. Chris, I don't know if you're aware of how many guys were on IR. I want to say there was like 10 to 12, maybe 13 guys on IR, and usually that's not a rest. Usually that's not a rest. But we had that next guy mentality up, and we went out there and balled our butts off, man. And very fortunate that Dom Capers called that play to get that interception in the Super Bowl. Because if he doesn't dial in that play, I don't think it doesn't happen.
Is that the one Nick Collins made the interception in the end zone?
That was actually a basic call that we called most of the years. 51 hole. That's our basic call. It's basically a run stopping defense. 51 hole. We got one guy, a linebacker, as a rap player in the middle. He's the free safety in the deep middle. Let's go play football, man to man. There's nothing sexy about it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Now, that was the same game where Charles Woodson got hurt. Now, did that mean at that point when he went out of the game with a broken collarbone that you were the next man up?
Correct. So technically, I was the dime. That shifted me into a nickel position. So when there's 6 defensive backs, when there's 4 receivers, there's 6 defensive backs. When there's 3 receivers, there's 5 defensive backs. If you can do the math. So basically, that puts you in any type of slot scenario, you know. But yeah, no, that was a tough time to see your brother go down. Normally, you see Charles Woodson, like if he die, he lays out. Normally, you see him pop back up. He's ready to go. But then you see him wincing, on the ground. You're like, oh shoot, you never like to see your brother go down. You think it's it's not it's more serious than maybe like a bruise, and so you really feel bad at the time. However, you got to recognize and acknowledge the moment. This is the Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get the opportunities, so let's go win this for him. I think Donald Driver went out with the sprained ankle too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so there were some. Even though it's Super Bowl, guys were still getting hurt. But my mentality was like, I didn't come this far to lose. I did not come this far to lose. There's no way nobody's going to take this from me or from us. Because, man, if you think about it, we got close in 2007, right? I feel like we got robbed in 2009 with Carlos Dansby in the wild card championship round. And then 2010 finally punched our ticket.
Hell of a story. I love that.
Yeah.
Jarrett, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the conversation. Before we let you go, tell our audience a little bit about what you have going on right now and where they can find you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Blow Dry Bar. High quality product offering high convenience. It's for the lady, just needs some self-love, come in, rejuvenate herself. She doesn't want to do their makeup. She doesn't want to do her hair, maybe for like weddings, events, could be pre-appointment work meetings. And you just want to look and feel your best walking out of there. My motto is you look good, you feel good, you play good, you get paid good. So hair done, we do extensions, we do makeup applications. You get priority booking online. So you don't have to call, you just book online and we'll come in, make you feel like $1 million when you walk out.
All right. Right on.
Yeah.
And where's this located?
It's right next to Panera Bread on Oneida Street.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all the listeners out there. We appreciate the downloads. We appreciate your ears. Until next time, peace.